Welcome back for episode 58 of Count Me In. I am your host, Adam Larson, and I will be bringing you today's conversation between my co-hosts Mitch and Steven Rivera. Mitch and Steve talked a lot about leadership and personal development, particularly at Johnson & Johnson. Steve is the vice president of the Global Technical Accounting Advisory Service and Policy Group, where he ensures the worldwide accounting compliance of J&J's business transactions. Especially in this time of crisis, strong leadership is invaluable to the success of an organization. In this episode, Steve highlights what J&J is doing to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic and emphasizes his leadership philosophies to continue leading his team. For a frontline perspective and top leadership insight into business today, let's head over and listen to this timely conversation.
So to start things off, I'd just like to ask you, as an organizational leader at J&J, what leadership quality do you believe has been your strongest in enabling you to find success through your career in this position?
Mitch, for I think what I've seen as leadership qualities is demonstrating really behaviors to really connect to the person who's really passionate about what they're doing and really being authentic in what they say and their follow through. The leaders who I've seen in my career and I've tried to aspire to is, they're not really swayed by public perception. Sometimes it may even be controversial, but again, that's important because I think when people listen, and when I speak, they know that there's sincerity in what I'm saying, and they believe what I say because I don't have a hidden agenda. And I think that's so important about leadership today, especially in finance, is that our people really hiding behind something. And it's not about me, it's not about the company, but it's really about really elevating more people to really be good at what they do. And then look, for me, I would say I've had some bumps along the way in my career, but I kind of held, I guess what I would say is kind of held the course, believing what I believe is important, not changing who I am, and being truthful, always being honest. And I think people really believe what you say, and they really value those trusted relationships that you've created over the years.
So, that's a great point. And I love authentic leadership. That's something that I really, connect with. And I'm just curious, amidst everything going on right now with the coronavirus, and I'm sure your workforce has been kind of turned upside down a little bit here. How have you been able to maintain those leadership qualities and maintain your visibility, your influence, your relationships with your employees? How are you going about doing that right now?
I think I think it's, it goes back to what I said earlier, we already had a team that's been so close knit. And what I mean by that is we all driven with a purpose. At Johnson & Johnson, we have a credo that we all follow. And, that's so important for us and how we kind of think about decision making. So I think the leadership that we have today, and the trust that we built with some of the folks we work with makes, even though we're not here, in person, I think that I believe this crisis has allowed us to still be connected, to be leading, to be agile, and there's no how can I say, there's no missteps because we kind of built that relationship really based on trust, and it's already been the foundation's already been created, and that's why I think it's so important. To build that foundational leadership with people around you who trust you, and even when not here, they can read an email and know exactly what you mean, as opposed to getting on the phone and try to say, well, hey, what did you mean by that, Mitch? Or Steve, I didn't understand what you said. And I think that all comes through once you have kind of built that, I would say, foundational trust with your teams.
I think that's a great point. And I guess leads into the next question here. We're talking a little bit about development opportunities for others. And for those who want to become leaders, maybe those in J&J who look up to you as somebody who, they want to follow in your footsteps. What kind of advice do you have to give to somebody like that?
My advice has always been is be inclusive. As a leader, they see what I do, and I think some of the folks who are coming up in the ranks, really see that leadership style really changing. Because it's evolved. When I first started Johnson & Johnson, it was really based on your level and who got invited to the table. But I think that that's evolved. It's really changed in the last 15 years. And the leadership style is about including and letting people see what their work is, how their work is being presented. So even though you're like the student that just came in and just started your first year in Johnson & Johnson, guess what? You might be in that big meeting with me, with all future leaders, but senior leadership, and just sitting around the table and observing that discussion and watching leaders talk and how they interact and how that all kind of transpires as a young person seeing that. I didn't have that experience when I was growing up in corporate America. I wasn't invited to the table. So to have some of these young folks come to these big meetings and see that leadership working, it's so important, because that's how they pick up their leadership qualities, by being included. I call it almost like a teachable moment. And unfortunately, I had to learn by fire. I had to come to these meetings and being sometimes a little bit nervous about what am I going to say, how I'm going to say it, because I didn't have that ability to be coached or see what others were doing at those meetings. It was my first time to come to a meeting dealing with leaders. And now these young folks are coming in and seeing their work not only being presented, but how it's being used. And I think that means so much to these young kids. And I think that's the leadership that I inspire to be. And I want them to do the same thing when they're in those leadership roles.
So it sounds like you have a very hands-on approach when it comes to leadership and the relationships that you develop. And, you kind of said it, sometimes you are just kind of thrown into the fire when it comes to decision-making and such, and just in the light of the times now, I want to go back to it in COVID-19. What are some of the things that maybe you or your organization is really realizing right now as far as challenges, but then also opportunities? And then how are you using this teamwork approach to make sure the organization as a whole continues to move forward?
I would say, I think that the thing that I think that's going to be really important for success with this crisis is connectivity. I think that I'm using technology that I never used before, like this meeting I'm having with you, Mitchell, on Zoom. I still believe, having a conference call is one thing, but to actually see you and see your face and how you're reacting to what I'm saying is so important. Because as being a global company, I have folks who I don't see often, and now I'm going to make sure that I make an opportunity to see them on a regular basis with video conferencing more, and really spending time. So I think for me, it's about connectivity through this crisis, staying connected, and continue to share the knowledge as things come up. I do a lot of I probably over communicate more, and that's been my style. And I think that's also going to be another critical, I would say, success for folks to continue to over communicate, so people know who's doing what, so we don't step on each other.
So I think the communication is great. And you said, you're adapting to new business environments and different tools that you're using.
Right.
I'm sure many others are going through the same thing. So how do you kind of balance as a leader in the organization being inspirational and comforting in a time that's challenging like this, while still making sure that everybody is, performing up to par and their performance is where you need it to be for the organization? How do you balance that?
I think the balance is, for me, it's about checking in. Even if it's 15 minutes, every other day. The balance is to continue to just make sure people are doing all right. I know Johnson & Johnson has done, at least for the entire company, has been having these town hall meetings, which has been really good for folks to kind of stay, what's J&J doing on a global basis, and what we're working on, and how we can connect and help. So I think when we hear that gives everyone else the ability to how we can connect, so that everyone's kind of looped in of what's happening. Because I really believe this next month, or maybe even longer, this notion of isolation and people feeling not connected will be will be really a challenge for lots of people. Because and even for myself, I have a very extrovert personality. How I'm kind of a hands-on kind of guy, as you said. I like to see people face to face and kind of make my assessment based on what I'm hearing face to face with folks. So how do I do that in that leadership style to still have that connection and so that folks know what I'm saying means something, but they're listening. They don't feel isolated, and they don't get kind of lost in the shuffle. So I goes back to what I said earlier. I think it's leadership with constant communication, constant kind of, I would say, constant check-in points. Like have a meeting tomorrow for 15 minutes with my team. Just say, hey, let's check in, make sure everyone's healthy. Is any family member sick? Are you sick? Just to kind of have that dialogue on a constant basis so that people feel that there's always a lifeline back to me, and there's also a lifeline back to my team.
So connectivity, to me, virtually is the leadership quality of diversity and inclusion that I know you're very passionate about, particularly hands-on in the office. So how has that dedication to diversity and inclusion, your organizational dedication to inclusiveness and social responsibility, how has all of this really contributed to the success that you're seeing in these new times and what you can kind of expect moving forward from Johnson & Johnson?
I would say, I think for me, just to kind of say, I am passionate about D&I because I think that as a leader, you got to have folks around you that don't have the same skills that you have. And I think that's something that some folks maybe don't understand. Sometimes they surround themselves with people that they're comfortable with. But I think you have to. This is the foundation. If you had a diverse team already in place, then you're probably in a better place than other teams that are not. So this is where I would say, it's important to have people around you that can come to the table with different, ways of thinking, different backgrounds, ethnicity. All this really helps create a stronger team environment. So, but this already was in place prior to the crisis, right? So I think that, so that's where I'm always been really, and for me, it's always been about bringing talent in that's different than myself, because I look at it to complement things that I don't have. And I think some people don't want to hear that. It's something that they don't want. This is about being authentic and being honest to yourself. And if you're honest with that, then I think you become a better leader because you know where your blind spots are. And those blind spots are sometimes people who work with you that could help you in things that you don't have. And that creates the best team that you want. And so I'm doing it here, Mitch, at my house, or I'm doing it in New Brunswick face to face, or I'm doing it around the world. It's being honest with yourself, having that self-awareness about where your weaknesses are. And again, being open to allow people to share their ideas and thoughts with you, and not have I would say this unconscious bias of, already, making a decision about what someone is saying because what they represent. And hopefully that will change. I'm not sure if it'll end, when I retire Johnson & Johnson, but I do know this generation is more open to that and more accepting of this. And I think that's just great to hear that we just have a workforce that's dynamic and able to have people to come up and step up who are different and without having any, unconscious bias of what they bring to the table.
Well, our conversation today has been very focused on leadership and your perspective, and it's been fantastic. The organization of J&J, we know it's very successful, and your leadership in that certainly contributes to it. I would just, before we wrap up, like to give you an opportunity to share any final thoughts on the idea of leadership, or if you have any, foresight or anything that you think we can expect as an accounting and finance profession coming up in the future, just your final thoughts for this conversation.
I go back to our core purpose. I go back to why I started Johnson and Johnson. Why Johnson and Johnson was the company I wanted to end my career. And Mitch, you can see my background. I've been bouncing around, not by choice. I'm almost been like a millennial to a certain degree. But it was just that I was able to have different I would say touch points in my career. But what I do find fascinating about being with Johnson and Johnson is that we have a purpose, and I think what really drives all of us at J&J is the purpose of really protecting humanity and saving lives, and we're just passionate about that. It's taking care of the whole person. And to know that this company that I belong to, even though I'm in finance, I still have a say, and I have an ability to influence that, because even from an accounting standpoint, there's choices that we all have to make, and being part of an organization that has that purpose of what we do is just it makes me feel that that it's something it's bigger than me, and to know, like we're doing right now, and the news breaking on us coming out with vaccines for COVID-19. I know Alex was on NBC this morning talking about it. To know that we're part of that and making it's just wonderful that we have a company that's able to really save us all at some point, to make sure that we the people we love aren't impacted by this virus. So and again, I think that's important. I think that's important for people who want to come to work for J&J. It's the purpose that we deliver every day that we deliver on the front lines to really protect folks, like everyone. And I always say this to even the people who work with me. One day we're all going to be a patient, and and to know that it's important. It becomes very personal, not only to me, but personally to every employee, because they know somebody, even themselves, could be inflicted by some disease someday in the future.
This has been Count Me In, IMA's podcast, providing you with the latest perspectives of thought leaders from the accounting and finance profession. If you like what you heard and you'd like to be counted in for more relevant accounting and finance education, visit IMA's website at www.imanet.org.